Maru is Destiny Rising's newest hero, and she's one grandma you don't want to cross. But let's say you managed to parlay, and now she's joined your crew. How should you build up the Pirate Queen, and will making her in-game viable cost you the One Piece? Let's get into it. Okay, I know I'm a little slow to the party, but honestly, it's just because I like to thoroughly test out the characters before I create my build guides. Just like I don't take brand sponsorships from brands I don't personally use, I also don't like advocating for characters or making build recommendations of them if I don't have first-hand experience on them. So over the last few days, I've gotten to take the latest hero Maru for a spin for the first time since the iOS alpha, and I've got to say, when built correctly, she's just as strong, if not more so, than she was in the alpha. First and foremost, Maru is a void offensive character with a focus on overshields, barriers, and knockback as her kit verbs. Her weapons are double grenade launchers with breach loads as her primary and heavy GLs as her heavy. If you're starting to worry about her falling to the wayside like Ikora, don't, because she brought with her a brand new weapon that might be one of my favorite in all of Destiny Rising, the Verger Drill. More on that later. Her major focus is on ability damage and boosting that ability damage through damage mitigation tied to her barrier, which also generates overshield for her. For someone like me with my preferred playstyle, she actually fits like a glove. Her gameplay loop is satisfying and the results are a hero that's really powerful even at T0. But she's not Hellhest. She slots into the sandbox about like other compatible options did and do. Gwen was pretty strong on release, as was Estella. None of these three come close to Hellhest though, who was seriously overtuned. Some of you pointed out I left Light Link companions out last time I did a character build guide, so just to get it out of the way early, there's three options to the game we'll recommend assuming you have all the heroes: Gwen, Ikora, and Rossi, but they aren't the only options. Gwen and Ikora are the best choices on paper, but Finale increases health by up to 20%, and Shamwei increases shields by up to 20% as well, making both of them legitimate options. There's also Yolder, who grants additional damage resistance when health is below 50%, and Atal also increases the duration of buffs applied to abilities as well. A recommendation here is Ikora for the straight void damage increase and Gwen for the void damage increase following a signature ability use, but if you're worried about survivability, Shamwei, Finale, and Yolder all have options you can play with. Now, let's dive into the meat and potatoes, her kit. Luckily, there's less verbs unlike with Hellhest, so her kit's a lot simpler to understand and the loop is even easier to achieve. For her passive, the word you need to know is Resonance. Resonance is gained by either dealing damage or absorbing damage with abilities, and Resonance enhances Maru's abilities. Losing health or shield will result in Resonance loss, with the loss amount scaling based on how much Maru has when losing health or shield. Pretty straightforward. Full Resonance is good, low Resonance is bad. But how does that interplay with her abilities? Her first signature, Annihilation Blast, shoots a cannonball that inflicts suppression and knockback. Suppression as a verb is a well-established and shared one, but if you're unaware, suppression just reduces the combatant's outgoing damage to you. Her second ability is Abyss Engulf, which generates a barrier at the collapsing cannon's muzzle, converting projectile damage and blast damage into an overshield with the amount of resonance affecting the duration of the overshield's timer. When resonance is at 50% or more, the projected barrier is also larger. This also reacts in real time. Her ultimate is Blight Volley, which is a roaming super, and during her super state, Maru can rapidly fire explosive energy projectiles from her cannon. Resonance enhances the firing, performance, and damage in real time. To clarify what I mean when I say in real time with these abilities, just for safety, if you're in super state and you lose 50% resonance from damage, your damage and firing performance will decrease as it's happening. Moving along, let's look at the three relic traits: Energy Reserves, Harmonic Transition, and Final Wish. Energy Reserves grants your Abyss Engulf the ability to recharge your Annihilation Blast when it absorbs damage. This creates a great loop of suppression, burst damage, overshield, repeat. Harmonic Transition states that using Abyss Engulf does not interrupt reloading. This essentially grants Maru the ability to reload while using the barrier, which is a really good ability. On paper, it sounds pretty standard, but just like with the recent Estella changes, having the ability to defend, rebuild your shield and charges, and reload at the same time to jump back into the fight when you drop it is a really good gameplay loop. The last trait, Final Wish, states that defeating targets with Blight Volley replenishes up to 50% super energy depending on the combatants, with base combatants worth 10%, elites worth 20, and powerful and higher worth 30. Her weapon mastery is Blast Resonance. Blast Resonance states that when resonance is at 50% or higher, the shots will split into 3 shells, each dealing 333 void damage to combatants within a 4 meter radius. At level 4, the split shell's damage is increased by 8% each time they hit the same target consecutively within 1.5 seconds, increasing by up to 24%. Alright, we got our kit broke down. What about our relics? Well, if you watched my quick farm guide for Maru, you already know that the build I initially considered was Ring of Abundance, Ring of Safeguarding, Scattering Shell, and Explosive Shell. While this combination is still really good, there's a couple of other options to really discuss here. My aforementioned build combines half Overshield Specialist with half Spread Specialist, but you could lean hard into either one of those playstyles and their respective relic sets if you wanted to, but all of them pale in comparison to the newest set of relics released from Maru. Honestly, I may be completely underselling this point. Let me clarify. Maru's new relic set is absolutely busted for her. It's called the Blizzar set, and here's what it does. Undaunted Blizzar is ability focused, and it grants 25% damage resistance for 2 seconds when gaining an overshield with repeated application of this effect, extending the buff's duration to a max of 10 seconds. Siphoning Blizzar generates overshield when dealing AoE damage to combatants. Safeguarding Blizzar increases the base max overshield by 30% and grants plus 40% ability damage while you're overshield. Bellicose Blizzar grants AoE damage a flat 25% increase and a 15% movement speed boost for 3 seconds after dealing AoE damage. With Hellhest, the broken power creep came from her kit, but with Maru, it's mostly in build crafting thanks to this set of artifacts. I've heard people talk about their use with Ikora, but from my testing, none of these are really all that great on Ikora due to her inability to generate overshields naturally. A problem that Maru doesn't have. The way Siphoning Blizzar pairs with Maru's kit to allow for overshield generation when an overshield is present really plays into the loop, and it ties into Undaunted Blizzar by also granting a 25% damage resistance every time an overshield is generated, giving the damage reduction a large uptime. Safeguarding Blizzar is just a really good buff to overshield and ability damage in general, and I actually recommend putting this one on your Rossi too if you can get the Arc version. But for Bellicose Blizzar, I've found that it seems to be inferior to Explosive Shell in my testing. Explosive Shell grants a 48% blast damage and radius buff on direct hits, which you should always be going for with a Breach Load grenade launcher, but especially with the Verger Drill. More on that in a minute. My advice on relics is to take them to 2700 power or more each to maximize your gains as well. In summary, through extensive testing, I've landed on an ideal build for myself of Undaunted Blizzar, Siphoning Blizzar, Safeguarding Blizzar, and Explosive Shell. For attributes, Overshield bonus, Void boost, Ability strength, Defense boost, and Super boost are all excellent choices here. I also almost always try to aim for weapon enhancement where possible, but that's really up to preference, honestly. Okay, kit and relics are down. Let's move into the weapons. Maru has access to 2 Breach Load grenade launchers, but there's really only a single option here. The new exotic, the Verger Drill. Just to mention the mythics so that you have all your options on the table though, it's the Arc, Lightweight Frame, Pleasant Fleet. In terms of traits, it can roll with Sympathetic Detonation, Fraternity, and Annihilation in Column 1, and Black Body, Splash Feast, and Polyplody in Column 2. Sympathetic Detonation is super appealing on paper, but in general play, due to various shields, it falls a little flat. Perhaps when we have an Arc character who uses Breach GLs, that might change, but for now you most likely won't be running activities with Arc shields as a Void character. Fraternity and Annihilation are both solid perks, and you could honestly go either way, but I typically avoid Fraternity just because of its reliance on your teammates staying alive, making it potentially a non-perk in high-end content. Annihilation is a solid perk that will let you rack up kills quicker, and with single-shot weapons like bows and Breach GLs, it hits its payout faster, meaning its uptime is pretty much 100% after the initial shot. In Column 2, Black Body is okay, but with slow reloading single-fire weapons, it's really just not able to maximize Black Body to its full potential. Splash Feast is an option, but Polyplody works really well and is the best option in Slot 2. Polyplody is essentially a flat 30% buff when hitting 2 or more targets and a massive 75% buff on a single target damage. This is extended even further with the exotic mod, upping its single target boost to 120%. Splash Feast caps out at a 3-time stack, granting 45% blast damage and 30% blast radius to shots, with the exotic mod granting an additional 9% blast radius for a total of 54% at 3 stacks. But it requires hits to proc, whereas Polyplody is just active. Now, onto the main attraction, the Verger Drill. The Verger Drill is the newest Season Pass exotic and easily Maru's best in slot weapon. It fires high-velocity slicing projectiles that drill through the target on direct hits, causing it to deal multiple instances of damage. Basically, it's the closest we've come to Witherhoard in Destiny Rising so far. Its exotic perk, Sigmund's Bane, deals 40% additional direct hit damage to elite and stronger combatants, with final blows increasing reload speed. Its catalyst is where things get truly spicy, with its C1 to 3 being upgrades across the board. At C1, the weapon will trigger an explosion after it's finished drilling, dealing 50% of the base blast damage. At C2, it gains the ability to be fired in a straight line and deals plus 15% direct hit damage. Finally, at C3, it increases that 50% blast damage from earlier up to 100% base blast damage. Clearly, I'm glazing the weapon, and for good reason. It's really, really good. Honestly, it might even be my favorite weapon in Destiny Rising currently. Next, let's look at the heavy grenade launcher options for Maru. There are 3 total options, but I'm going to tell you to straight avoid one of them entirely, that one being the Smart Bomb. The Smart Bomb is an amazing weapon, but in both the alpha and the release version, she shares the same weakness with it: a slow charging super time. Since the Smart Bomb's relying on faster charging supers, it's a terrible fit for Maru. Can you still use it? Sure, but realistically, it's just not a good fit for her. In terms of mythics, we have the Han 1 Cannon Kronk and the new mythic option, Surinobuse. As I mentioned in my farming guide, for the Han 1, you want auto-loading holster in column 1 and ensured yields in column 2. The Surinobuse has access to conjugation, solidarity, and auto-loading holster in column 1, and eager aspirant, reincarnation, and polyplody in column 2. Conjugation is excellent for a damage perk in column 1 when used specifically on Maru as the elemental types match, but there's no exotic mod to upgrade the perk presently. Solidarity is also pretty decent, but it also can't be upgraded on this weapon as Spinwheel Mag doesn't have it in its perk pool. Auto-loading holster though, that one can be upgraded, and its mod is honestly pretty broken. In addition to auto-reloading the magazine while stowed, it will also overflow the mag by 25% every 2.5 seconds up to a 100% overflow while stowed. In column 2, we've got Eager Aspirant, Reincarnation, and Polyplody. Reincarnation has a potential for a 90% damage boost, but its low timer makes it really situational and only applicable when using it for ad clear. Eager Aspirant is a good fit with auto-loading holster, but it can't be upgraded, and though I believe it's a slept-on perk, the gradual depletion of the damage bonus makes it a secondary pick in comparison to Polyplody, which has a flat 30% uptime for multiple targets hit, and up to 120% for single target, making it applicable to both bosses and ads. Therefore, my recommended loadout is the exotic Verga Drill and the mythic Surinobuse with auto-loading holster and Polyplody. Okay, that covers kit, artifacts, and weapons. How does she play? Well, that really depends on your preference, but she's a really good fit for me personally. I have a lot of fun playing her, and to be honest, a lot of that is due to the Verga Drill. But her kit blends really well with the weapon, so much so that I barely reach into my bag for my heavy weapon, which is why something like Surinobuse with auto-loading and Polyplody works so well. Unlike Hellhest, her kit is easy to use and understand instantly, and she has a general use appeal. Hellhest was broken specifically if you played into her kit and playstyle. The Maru works more like Rossi, being great out of the box and easy to use for literally anyone picking her up. Because of her ease of use, she doesn't particularly stand out as an absolute best in class in a lot of things either. She takes over the Void Blast spot Ikora held, but if we're being honest, Ikora wasn't even really holding that spot well herself, with most opting for Wolf instead. With the new Breach GL, Ikora's prospects have gone up, but with rockets still in the shape that they're in, she's still suffering. And before I get the inevitable, you don't play her, I actually gold medaled Ikora just to compare her to Grandma Maru for this video. Rip to my resources. But does that mean I don't like Maru? Nah, in fact, she's one of my favorites. Will she oppressively dominate the battlefield and set the tone like Hellhest did? Nope, but that doesn't mean she's not any good. Her weapon sets are solid, her abilities are easy to use, easy to understand, and work well, and she's able to output some really good DPS. She's good at T0 right out of the box, and you can get up and going with her in a matter of seconds with little to no learning curve. But this is where I'll lose some of you. If you make some investment into her talent tree, you'll be rewarded even further early on. With Hellhest, the talent 3, 4, and 6 nodes were the most important, but with Maru, it's the early nodes that really make things spicy, in particular her talent 1. Her talent 1 increases Annihilation Blast charges from 1 to 2. As an ability-focused unit, having multiple charges for her signature damage ability is a massive boon, and it's her first talent tree node. Her second talent tree node also plays a big role, granting recharge for her Abyss and Gulf Shield with weapon hits, light GLs generating 5% and heavies granting 10%. Her talent 3 also ups the number of shells from Annihilation Blast from 3 to 5 when resonance is at 50% or greater charge. Talent 4 and 5 are buffs to damage, with 4 granting plus 100% Blight Volley damage when resonance is full, and T5 giving 20% flat damage boost to Annihilation Blast. Lastly, at Tier 6 is an efficiency improvement to her Abyss of Gulf when resonance is full, adding an extra 15% efficiency to Overshield generation and Annihilation Blast recharge rate. All of that listed, I'm going to say right now that my recommendation is T1, minimum. That second blast is a really big buff, really early into her talent tree, and it already does a large amount of damage on its own. Plus, the regeneration from Maru's absorption means that with a second charge, the amount of uptime on the Annihilation Blast is substantially, massively increased. For a character with a large focus on their ability damage output, having a higher uptime really acts as a major boon that just pushes the character's kit and viability even higher. In addition, it's worth noting that the Annihilation Blast can be used while holding the barrier open, while weapons cannot, so it further increases the amount of damage you can deal while the absorption barrier is deployed. If you take it further and go to Talent 2, there's also a lot of benefit there as well, since having weapon hits replenish your barrier uptime, and it really can play into the loop and ability spam nature of Maru even more. Talent 3 is where I consider things to become a bit more voluntary. The Annihilation buffs are good, but the abilities themselves are already good out of the box, so realistically it's just icing on the cake. Increasing the cannonball splits from 3 to 5 is a neat buff, but wholly optional in nature, and the same can be said about the other buffs as well. They put the most desirable options at the first 2 talent nodes from Maru, which makes them a bit more accessible. That having been said, the T0 Maru is really still a good hero right out of the box that has an easy to use and master kit and skill ceiling. Her defensive capabilities coupled with her DPS output make her a viable option for a lot of in-game content. And thanks to her new relics, she also has access to a 15% movement speed boost. Now let's talk about in-game. Because of the way that in-game is structured, activities typically come with a timer attached. This is pretty much true of every single in-game activity. Can Maru crush it in some Gauntlet? Absolutely. I didn't get to test it this weekend to see if anything was changed, but back in the alpha, she was cracked in PvP too. But what about Calamity Ops? Well, actually, if you look at the leaderboards, it's pretty clear that she's a very meta pick right now. For this current iteration of Calamity Ops, at least anyways, a vast majority of the top 10 teams on the leaderboard are 2 Hellhest and 1 Maru, and 8 of the top 10 teams are running this configuration. Of the 8, only 1, the current rank 2 team, uses Maru with Explosive Shell. The rest all run her with Bellicose Blazar for the 15% movement speed boost. 100% of them are all also running the Virga Drill. This alone is a testament to how good the weapon actually is, and it's good on Ikora too. I tried the Virga Drill on Ikora just to see if maybe it was just a situation where I was impressed by the weapon and not necessarily Maru, but after some testing, I can confirm the weapon is goated, but it's not just the weapon that makes Maru appealing. I also took her into the Expanse at 66k, and it was a pretty easy trek with Maru. I've also run her in Grandmaster activities with little to no issues as well. Legendary Campaign, Gauntlet Ops, Maru's been viable in all of them to this point. The question of longevity in the meta arises when considering how well a character will work in rotation once their modifiers expire. For example, once the Void Blast modifiers expire, how likely are we to continue seeing Marus on the leaderboards? Well, if we look to Ningfei, who's consistently been a staple in Calamity since the launch, we can find 1 currently at rank 14 presently. His speed and ability to tackle every Shinka except for spread make him a good choice in just about any meta, except this one. Once rapid fire Shinkas return, regardless of the elemental typing, Ningfei will fly back into the meta, and honestly, that's the way this game seems like it's going to work. Metas will come and go, but the question is, when metas return, how likely is it that the hero you're purchasing will return to the rotation? That's what determines their longevity. So let's look at a specific example. We know the next modifiers coming will be Solar and Impact. Likewise, we know from in-game information that the next hero will be a Solar hero with a Piercing primary and an Impact heavy. How likely is it that Gwen will return to the meta with these updated modifiers? Gwen's Solar adjustment is limited to her Solar sidearms, but given that Void and Blast are the other half of the equation, and new modifiers run with the current and previous modifier, for example, this month the current is Void and Arc shields with Piercing and Spread Shinkas, that means the next will be Void and Solar shields with Spread and Impact Shinkas. Gwen's Void and Impact adjustment plus her general DPS output almost guarantees she'll be meta viable with the next modifier. However, let's stop and modify the pecking order a little bit. If the modifiers were Solar, Void, Spread, and Piercing, would Gwen be viable? Not likely. It's difficult to ask the question of viability and judge drawing for a character in this game because of how it's set up. Each tool in the toolbox has its own purpose, and in a game where only a couple of heroes address the specific circumstances and modifiers that Maru does, the main competition being one of the arguably worst characters in the game presently, Maru will be centered into her addressment and role for the foreseeable future. So let's sum it up. Is Maru worth pulling, even if you're only going for T0? Yes. If you've got the currency and or means to do so, I recommend pulling for Maru. She's fun to play, has one of the best exotic weapons in the game, addresses a specific niche that has limited coverage currently, and her gameplay loop is easy to pick up and run with for players of any skill level. If you're looking for a long-term investment in terms of a hero to pick up, Maru will likely hold the Void Spread crown for the foreseeable future. So if you're not already highly invested into Ikora, Maru is your Huckleberry. I do highly recommend, if you make the decision to pick up Maru though, that you consider buying the Battle Pass as well. I know this isn't exactly a free-to-play friendly suggestion, but given how good the Verger Drill is, it's worth every single penny, just straight up. Anyways, what do you all think? Are you enjoying Maru? Are you using a build that's different from mine? Comment down below, let me know what you think of our newest hero, and I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya!